As the council chamber filled with murmurs, the towering doors opened, and they entered. The humans, known across the galaxy as Deathworlders, stepped forward. No hulking machines flanked them, no polished AI soldiers shadowed their steps. Unlike every other species represented in the Galactic Council, who depended entirely on technology to fight, the humans arrived alone, unarmed, without the protection of a single automated guard. Commander Nika watched from her seat, arms crossed, gaze sharp. "Who comes without a guard in this galaxy?" she whispered to a nearby aide. The humans were an enigma, a dangerous one, by all appearances, and now they stood before her, smiling in that peculiar way only humans could. A faint hum of curiosity buzzed through the room. Why would anyone willingly appear defenseless? It made no sense, especially not here, where AI soldiers were the norm, almost an extension of a species' identity. Yet here they were, hands empty, eyes clear. One of the human representatives, a tall figure with calm eyes and a steady stance, nodded politely to the assembly. "Greetings," he began, his voice resonant in the vast hall. "We're honored to be here among you. Thank you for the invitation." Polite, formal, the typical language of diplomacy, but no one could ignore the absence of their AI army. Commander Nika shifted, studying them closely, trying to understand this peculiar species that had caused so much stir without lifting a finger. It wasn't fearlessness she saw in them, it was something else, something that bordered on readiness. The murmurs grew louder, and a delegate from a distant star cluster, visibly puzzled, finally voiced the question on everyone's mind. "Your robotic soldiers, where are they?" The human leader's mouth curved in a subtle smile. "We decided to handle things personally. We don't always depend on machines to protect us." A ripple of disbelief swept through the room, murmurs turning to gasps and shocked stares. The Galactic Council had never encountered such a mindset, not in millennia. Dependence on technology, on AI soldiers and automated warfare, was woven into the fabric of interstellar diplomacy. But these humans seemed to sidestep all of it with the ease of a step over a puddle. Commander Nika leaned forward, eyes narrowing as she scrutinized every detail of the human's demeanor. "Interesting," she muttered to herself. It wasn't just their lack of machines. It was their calm, a collectedness that seemed unbreakable. They had chosen to arrive unprotected, in their own flesh, something she couldn't comprehend. Flesh was vulnerable, flesh could break. But they stood as if nothing could touch them. Another council member, less subtle, demanded answers. "Are you saying you came here, unarmed and unguarded, without the protection of any AI soldiers simply by choice?" The human leader nodded. "We've found that sometimes, relying on ourselves is more effective. We're here as we are." There was a pause, his gaze sweeping the room. "Machines are valuable, of course. We've built them ourselves, know their strengths and weaknesses. But sometimes you need more than a machine's logic to navigate certain complexities." Commander Nika's fingers tapped against her chair's armrest. "So if a conflict were to arise, you'd handle it without technological support?" she asked, her tone laced with incredulity. "We handle things differently, yes," the human leader replied, neither boasting nor defensive. His gaze locked onto hers, direct and unwavering. "We fight our battles in person when necessary." For a moment, there was silence, an uneasy weight hanging in the room. These humans, so different from the others, had willingly defied convention, their very presence challenging everything the Galactic Council held as universal truth. A wave of discomfort washed over the delegates. Nika sensed it, a collective unease, a dawning realization that these humans might just be as formidable as they seemed. Another delegate finally spoke up, voice sharp and questioning. "What purpose does this serve? What advantage could it possibly bring?" The human paused, as if considering how to respond. Then he answered quietly. "We come from a place where survival isn't guaranteed. We grew up knowing that there are things no machine can teach you: instinct, resilience, adaptability. We chose to fight because it's in our nature, not simply because it's necessary. Sometimes, the machine isn't enough." Nika's gaze tightened, a strange respect mingling with her skepticism. She had seen every type of warrior, every type of weapon. But never had she encountered a species that preferred to bear the cost of conflict themselves. It was reckless, foolish, and yet undeniably compelling. Interesting philosophy, she said, her tone unreadable. But will it hold up when put to the test? The human leader nodded. We're always ready to prove it, if required. A few days after the humans' introduction, the Galactic Council faced an urgent matter. A territorial dispute had erupted on the frontier, a region rich in resources but fiercely contested by two council species. Traditionally, disputes like these were settled by deploying robotic forces in a controlled skirmish, each side showcasing its strength without risking lives. It was a tried-and-true method, upheld by every member species. But now, there was a complication. The humans, with their peculiar approach, were expected to participate as allies. Council members debated the wisdom of including them in this skirmish, given their insistence on doing things personally, without the support of advanced AI soldiers. Despite their recent demonstration of confidence, many council delegates saw their methods as backward, even dangerous. Commander Nika remained silent through most of the debate, observing as members voiced their concerns. Yet curiosity tugged at her. The humans intrigued her. Their refusal to use robotic soldiers challenged her understanding of warfare, and part of her wanted to see how far they'd take it. Finally, she spoke, her voice carrying weight. Let them participate. They believe in their methods, let's allow them to prove it. The decision was made. A formal invitation was extended to the humans to join the battle as neutral peacekeepers. To the Council's astonishment, the humans accepted without hesitation. When questioned about their plans, the human representatives simply replied, "We'll do what's necessary." The response left more questions than answers, but there was no time for further inquiries. On the day of the skirmish, the Council assembled in a high-tech observation deck overlooking the battlefield. Commanders from each species programmed their robotic armies, adjusting strategies, calibrating weapons, and setting defensive protocols. Rows upon rows of metallic soldiers stood ready, a sight that embodied the galaxy's pinnacle of technological achievement. Then, the humans arrived. But unlike every other delegation, they brought no machines, no AI-controlled soldiers. A small group of human fighters stood at the ready, armed only with standard-issue combat gear, nothing remotely robotic or mechanized. This decision left council members in stunned silence. Was this some kind of joke? Did they truly believe they could fight a robotic force with just their own bodies? Commander Nika's gaze shifted between the polished, gleaming robots and the humans, dressed in simple combat suits, their faces calm and unreadable. The difference was stark, almost absurd. The robotic armies exuded power, their mechanical forms built for efficiency and brute force. Meanwhile, the humans simply stood, waiting, their only weapons held in their hands, their eyes sharp with focus. One council member couldn't hold back. "Are they seriously going to enter the field like that?" he muttered, a mix of disbelief and irritation in his tone. Another delegate responded, "If they're as foolish as they appear, they won't last a minute." Nika said nothing, her eyes fixed on the humans. Something told her they weren't as reckless as they seemed. She felt a strange tension in the air, a quiet anticipation as the signal to begin the battle was given. In an instant, the robots moved, advancing in perfect formation. The machines calculated every movement, predicting each possible outcome with relentless efficiency. The humans, however, didn't follow any preset formations or strategies. They moved with a fluidity and adaptability that defied the logic of the machines, dodging and weaving with instinctive precision. It was unlike anything the council members had ever seen. The humans anticipated the robots' attacks before they even landed, dismantling one machine after another with targeted strikes, using their own hands, speed, and a level of cunning no programmed entity could match. Their moves were quick and purposeful, aiming for the joints, power cores, and control units, bypassing the heavily armored exteriors to disable the robots with shocking speed. The council members watched, stunned, as the humans seemed to flow through the battlefield, taking down machines in ways that defied the council's understanding of combat. It was as if they'd been trained specifically to exploit weaknesses no AI could recognize or defend against. One by one, the robots fell, their metal shells crumpling to the ground as the humans moved to the next target. There was no hesitation, no faltering, only a relentless focus. The machines, despite their power, struggled to keep up, their programming unable to predict the humans' unconventional methods. Nika watched in silent awe, her skepticism turning to grudging respect. These humans were more than just primitive. They fought with a kind of controlled fury, a mixture of skill and intuition that no machine could replicate. Their resilience, their adaptability, it was unlike anything she'd encountered. At one point, a human fighter faced down a towering assault robot, nearly twice his size. The robot advanced, weapons primed, but the human sidestepped with lightning speed, using the machine's own momentum against it. Within moments, he'd found a weak point, a vulnerable panel, and with a swift strike, the robot collapsed, sparks flying. Another human, smaller in stature, took on a defensive machine, slipping past its barriers and landing precise strikes that rendered it motionless. The council members were mesmerized, unable to believe their eyes. These beings, who chose to engage in direct combat without the aid of advanced technology, were holding their own against the galaxy's most sophisticated robotic soldiers. Finally, as the last of the robots fell, a stunned silence filled the observation deck. The humans, though outnumbered and seemingly outmatched, had managed to disable every last machine. Their own team had sustained injuries, but they stood victorious, breathing heavily, faces marked by determination. The council members exchanged glances, some with disbelief, others with awe. They hadn't just witnessed a battle, they'd seen a revelation. The council chamber was steeped in silence after the skirmish, yet the impact of what they had witnessed lingered in every corner of the room. Whispers gave way to heated discussions, some delegates outraged, others filled with a grudging admiration. The humans' combat style, raw, instinctual, and shockingly effective, had left the council both intrigued and unsettled. Commander Nika found herself replaying the battle in her mind, analyzing every maneuver, every strike. The humans had dismantled machines that were considered flawless by most galactic standards, finding vulnerabilities no one had ever detected. Her mind buzzed with questions that she couldn't quite silence, questions about what they might have lost by placing so much faith in machines. Could it be that the Council's reliance on AI had dulled their edge, left them blind to certain forms of strength? Nearby, a council member shook his head in frustration, his tone laced with disbelief. They exploited weaknesses our engineers swore were foolproof. How did they even know where to look? They didn't just look, they understood. Nika replied quietly, though her voice carried across the room. Their approach isn't built on algorithms. It's based on something no machine can calculate, survival instinct honed in real, relentless conditions. The murmurs grew louder, a few delegates scoffing, unwilling to believe that a species so dependent on physical strength could rival the precision of AI soldiers. Yet, a new undercurrent was taking hold, subtle but undeniable, a curiosity, a realization that perhaps they had underestimated what it meant to be human. One of the younger delegates finally spoke up, his voice tinged with both doubt and interest. Are we certain we're not missing something essential by relying only on machines? Perhaps our systems aren't as infallible as we believe. This notion was unsettling for the Council. Generations of interstellar conflict had pushed their civilizations toward a philosophy of efficiency and preservation. Delegating danger to machines had seemed not only logical but essential. Yet the humans had turned that logic upside down, revealing a gap in the Council's understanding of combat. Commander Nika took a deep breath before addressing the assembly. The humans have shown us a dimension of combat we've ignored. Their reliance on instinct and adaptability, rather than code and programming, has reshaped my perspective. Perhaps it's time we reconsidered our dependence on AI to such an extent. A delegate from a distant system shook his head in defiance. Are you suggesting we abandon our technology and evolve to hand-to-hand combat? He laughed dismissively, though his voice carried an edge of uncertainty. No, Nika replied, her voice steady. I'm suggesting balance. We've become so absorbed in optimizing our machines that we've neglected to develop ourselves. We haven't trained in decades. Our physical endurance is minimal. Humans have reminded us that there's value in strength beyond programming. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, though not all were convinced. Nike knew change would be difficult, especially for a council so entrenched in its beliefs. But she felt an awakening, an opening to new possibilities, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. Meanwhile, the human representative entered the chamber, aware of the discussions but showing no sign of arrogance or gloating. He approached Commander Nika, nodding respectfully. We came here as allies, not as critics. But if there's anything our methods have shown, it's that sometimes facing challenges directly, without relying on external aids, brings a different strength. Nika studied his face, trying to gauge his intent. You're suggesting we change our entire approach to warfare? That's not something done lightly. He nodded. Perhaps not, but change rarely is. Where we come from, survival requires more than just strength. It demands adaptability, and understanding that every battle is more than just a calculation. The room fell silent as his words sank in. For the Council, this idea was new, perhaps even revolutionary. In their galaxy, survival and conflict had always been about who could build the most resilient machines. But now, for the first time in centuries, there was a reminder that resilience could be an innate, personal strength. Nika turned back to the Council, her voice resolute. I suggest we begin a pilot program, voluntary, of course, for those willing to train beyond just operating machinery. Let us learn from our new allies. Perhaps there is more to gain here than we realize. A council member raised an objection. We've evolved beyond this kind of warfare. Returning to it is regressive. The human leader responded calmly. Adaptation isn't regression. It's growth. There's value in facing your challenges with your own strength, understanding your own limitations. Machines are tools, not replacements. The assembly exchanged uneasy glances, but the seed had been planted. It was clear that while not everyone would accept this philosophy, the idea itself was taking root. The humans had done more than defeat a robotic army. They'd introduced a perspective that could reshape the galaxy's approach to conflict and survival. As the meeting adjourned, Nika found herself reflecting deeply. For the first time in her career, she felt the stirrings of doubt and the absolute dominance of machines. Perhaps the humans were offering something more than just a new way to fight. They were showing what it meant to rely on one's own strength, to trust in resilience that went beyond mere technology. In the days that followed, quiet discussions spread throughout the Council's ranks. A few members, moved by the humans' example, expressed interest in exploring a different kind of training, one that didn't just hone skills and technology but nurtured physical and mental strength. The humans had sparked something within them, a desire to reclaim a part of themselves they hadn't known was missing. For Nika, it was the beginning of a personal journey. The humans had exposed a vulnerability, a weakness masked by the flawless sheen of technology. She was determined to learn from it. In the weeks that followed, whispers of the humans' victory spread across Council territories, reaching even the most distant systems. Conversations that had once revolved around the latest AI innovations now included debates about strength, adaptability, and the humans' raw resilience. Council members found themselves re-examining assumptions they had taken as absolute. It was a slow shift, but one that pulsed through every level of the Council, stirring a curiosity that could no longer be ignored. Commander Nika couldn't shake the thoughts that had taken root since that battle. She found herself studying Council military archives, poring over records that predated their dependence on AI. Hidden in old, nearly forgotten files were references to training regimens once common across species, regimens focused on building the body, the mind, not just the machine. How had they lost that? The Council was divided. Some clung to their belief that progress lay in perfecting technology, not in reverting to outdated methods. They dismissed the humans' approach as reckless, dismissing Nika's growing arguments for reintroducing physical training. Yet a faction within the Council, led quietly by Nika, began considering a pilot program to balance the reliance on machines with a return to personal resilience. A subtle momentum was building. One afternoon, Nika found herself meeting with the human representative, whose people were now hailed as unlikely teachers. He offered insights, not from a place of superiority, but with a calm certainty. "We don't believe in abandoning technology," he explained. "But we know that it's not the only thing that can protect us. A machine can break, falter, be outmaneuvered. But our own strength, our instincts, those are things we carry with us." Nika considered this, knowing that what he described was alien to much of the council. Yet, the concept resonated deeply with her, touching a part of her that had grown weary of relying solely on machines for security. The memory of the humans dismantling the council's most formidable robots lingered, a testament to a strength they had all but abandoned. As the days passed, an unexpected shift began to surface. Some council species, once skeptical, started looking to the humans for guidance. Curious warriors and diplomats approached them with questions about training techniques, about resilience and mental endurance. The humans, far from reveling in their newfound status, shared openly, emphasizing that strength wasn't simply about muscle or agility. It was about balance, about knowing one's own limits and pushing past them. A few council members tried the humans' methods, beginning simple physical and mental endurance exercises. Reports surfaced of council guards who noticed improved focus, of strategists who found themselves considering new angles. The results, though modest, hinted at a potential long ignored. Slowly, others followed, until a small but growing contingent of council members began to see merit in the humans' approach. The council wasn't entirely won over, of course. Voices of dissent remained loud, insisting that this trend was a fad, that the humans' methods were a novelty. But Commander Nika saw something different. In her own small group of council members, she noticed subtle changes, a renewed sharpness, a resilience that reminded her of the humans she had once viewed with suspicion. It was a humbling realization, but one that invigorated her with purpose. Her initiative grew, and eventually, the council approved a pilot program, not as a replacement for AI, but as a supplement to it. Those who volunteered found themselves tested in ways they hadn't been in years. The training was grueling, a challenge to the body and the mind. Some abandoned it, finding the demands too intense, but others stayed, driven by the same spark that had propelled the humans. Nika continued to meet with the humans, learning from their experiences, understanding their philosophy. She found their approach transformative, a return to a foundation that felt almost forgotten. As more council members joined the training, she saw in them a shift, not just in strength, but in perspective. They began to recognize the value in knowing they could rely on their own abilities, even in the midst of advanced technology. Word of the council's new training initiative spread beyond their territories, drawing attention from other species. Some of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, once known for their physical prowess, began revisiting their own forgotten traditions. The humans had started a ripple that had reached far beyond the council's halls, igniting a curiosity for self-reliance and resilience that had been missing for generations. Months later, Nika stood alongside a mixed team of council members and humans during a joint exercise, marveling at how far they'd come. She witnessed the council members embracing the training with determination, their movements sharper, their endurance evident. For the first time in her career, she saw her colleagues as something more than strategists. They were becoming warriors, individuals who knew the balance between technology and their own potential. Reflecting on everything that had changed, she understood that the humans hadn't come to teach superiority. They had come to share a truth born from their own hard-won survival. It wasn't about abandoning progress, but about remembering that strength lay as much within oneself as it did in the machines they built. They had been shown a path that combined the best of both worlds, a unity between the organic and the engineered. As she watched her peers adapt, grow, and embrace this new approach, Nika felt a rare sense of hope. The council was evolving, no longer bound solely by algorithms and metal, but rediscovering a depth within themselves. She knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were stronger now, not just as a council but as individuals. And in that unity, she saw a future where both technology and the spirit of resilience could coexist, a future shaped by the very beings who had taught them to look within.